And welcome to this edition of the Native News Update on this Thursday, February 24th. I'm your host for today's program, Paul DeMain. Many of the stories read here can also be found at our websites at www.indiancountrynews.com. And here are some of the news stories from the day from the Associated Press. And today in particular, as the world knows, the state of Wisconsin is experiencing some of the most prominent protests in the capital of Madison, Wisconsin, that people have ever seen. Our governor, in his attempt to bust the unions and privatize state power generating and heating plants and lower the cost to Medicare and budget and Badger Care, was forcing a bill through both houses of the legislature without the regular public hearings, arguments, and amendments. 14 state senators fled the state of Wisconsin to Illinois to deprive the Senate of a quorum to operate and slow things down. Since then, several days of protests have seen as many as 80,000 plus people in the streets in the rotunda of the Capitol. And yesterday, I stopped in Madison to visit the protests there and ran into two university students, one from Madison, the other from UW Green Bay, and asked them about what they saw as important as they prepared to support the working class people, labor, and others impacted by the Tea Party's line in the sand. First, let's meet Luanne Funmaker from UW Green Bay, and then we move on to RaeAnne Funmaker, who attends UW Madison, and some of the Capitol protest pictures I took yesterday are scattered in between. And finally, we talked to Shoshone Bannock correspondent Mark Trahant about the federal line in the sand, March 4th, when, without a continuing resolution, some programs are beginning to prepare to shut down, and an overall shutdown of the federal government could be on the horizon. Should be an interesting spring.
Very serious bill, and a lot of people are affected by that, and I believe that we're all aware of that, and that we'd all like to do our part to raise awareness and hopefully not get the bill passed.
Support that local 18. All right, I do too. I support America.
I think it's important for coalitions to work together. Are you seeing some of that diversity here in these protests?
Yeah, I've seen a lot of people sort of come together, people that wouldn't often sort of come together in solidarity, sort of make that change and make that move, and really try and work with each other and understand each other's position and how they're affected personally from it. And I believe that there are a lot of people that are coming together now.
Okay, thank you very much.
I skipped some of my classes, and I emailed my professors, and I told them, I don't mean to be disrespectful, but I'm not going to be able to make it to class today because what I want to do is to go back to my tribal school and go back to the Oneida Reservation and try and be some type of historical injustice like guidance counselor or advisor, and also bring back like spoken word and poetry to help with different forms of expression, and also to help with reading and writing skills for the Native students. And I told them, I told my professors that this is so important to me. What's going on right now will affect my future. I started just doing some phone banking, and then after the next couple of days I just kept hearing more information, and when the rallies were happening and a couple of my classes, some of the professors actually canceled class, so I was able to attend some of the rallies and some of the tribal people. I've seen a lot of individuals, some Native students, some of the Native TAs who are in like the library schools, for instance, or individuals mostly and what they're involved in, but nothing real like as a tribe kind of organized. I feel that they're really targeting the working class and the lower class, and they're targeting unions and collective bargaining. These people who are already trying to make ends meet, trying to survive. And it's like, you're trying to fix the budget by taking all these shortcuts, but why don't you sit down and hash out the real important stuff? I had a conversation with one of my professors the other day, and to me, if they took that deregulation from the 1980s or something where they taxed a certain amount of people and they expected it to trickle down, those people, the top 5%, made over trillions of dollars. And if they really want to, they could tax, the top 5% of the richest people, and that would help us out of this budget crisis and not widen the gap. Because
University's got to go! Hey, hey! Ho, ho! 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 University's got to go! Hey, hey!
it will negatively affect the lower class the most, and that's what makes me passionate about it, is that put in the emergency budget bill, so it was put in so it would go fast, and maybe he thought maybe people wouldn't think about that or slow down to really take time to understand this bill, but they're trying to do a lot in a short period of time, and that's going to just dramatically affect a lot of people. And so, I think that that's a really interesting aspect of how this bill is being presented, is the time frame. They're not taking the time, they're not really hearing the people. And as far as I've heard, that sometimes they close some of the hearings, the open hearings or open lobbying. So, I think that's pretty ridiculous, to be honest.
Mark Trahant, lots of things unfolding in the political arena here in the last couple of weeks, and it seems like it's all headed toward a line in the sand here in Wisconsin and with the federal government. Let's start a little bit with what's happening with the federal government. It looks like you have some dates there where it looks like federal government may shut down for a while.
Right. March 4th is kind of the line in the sand day. And they've got to figure out how to do a continuing resolution by then, or start nominally shutting the federal government down.
How fast would government be reduced? It seemed like we went through this many years ago, but 1 week after they begin running out of money, what are we going to see, and where are we going to see the shutdown begin? Do you have any idea?
Yes, history is a pretty good guide. They'll start immediately with kind of facades. All museums, parks, that sort of thing will close. Anyone considered essential will be kept on, and the idea is that if eventually the budget is funded, they'll get reimbursed, but they won't be paid in the meantime. Most Social Security checks are now automated, so they'll continue to go out, which is actually the biggest amount of money. It will produce hardships with contracting, particularly with clinics and that sort of thing. Urban Indian clinics, last time there was a shutdown, it was 21 days, and it was a real stretch for some of them to stay open. And having been at several urban Indian clinics, I can tell you they're stretched to the wire anyway, and this certainly won't help.
Do you see communities or programs preparing for this potential in any way? Do you see any activity going on now? Have they been told to begin mothballing their fax machine or anything like that?
They're starting to. Not I mean, everyone's wondering what's going to happen until there's an actual bill. Uh, One of the latest proposals, for example, is the Republicans said, we'll do a short-term funding extension, but you got to cut basically $2 billion a week. And that's a number that's probably unacceptable to the administration or the Senate.
Is what's going on in Madison, and I understand. I was in Madison Capitol yesterday. There was people reading letter after letter from all over the world. They were reading letters of support from Egypt, from labor unions in Canada and other countries all over the United States. There was 700 firefighters who walked through the Capitol. 1,000 people from California, labor unions who had showed up. You're in Idaho. What do you read into all of that? Is this a match that lights the fire on this whole issue of the line in the sand?
I think there's a very deep division about what kind of country we want to have, and that's playing out in a variety of different forums. One of the things that strikes me is how so much of this is reflective of the divisions between age and diversity and some of the things that we haven't had to wrestle with for a long time are kind of coming to the surface. Here in Idaho, it's taking on some really unfortunate positions with the legislature jumping in on trying to take away cigarette taxes from reservations, trying to move and claim jurisdiction and that sort of thing. So there's a real tension going on right now.
It seems to me that part of the problem is the process that the governor is using here in the state of Wisconsin. An emergency budget bill that's being rammed through a 2-week session and everyone's objecting to it. There's a lot more parts to it than just unions. There's cuts to Medicaid, there's cuts to Badger Care, there's the sale of state assets without going through the usual process. And now we have the governor getting caught on tape talking to one of the, an alleged Koch brothers from California about how this is really a union kind of busting line in the sand. That if we, this is where Wisconsin's going to go. Wisconsin
That
was
tape
one
is
of
something else.
Yeah, Wisconsin was one of the first states to ever provide for arbitration and union. A long history of workers and labor rights here in the state of Wisconsin. They may have would they pick the wrong place? And I hear there's talk of a general strike now, at least 1 or 2 days if the assembly passes it, to test the strength of where this protest is going. Already, I guess Indiana and Iowa legislators have stepped back on some of these same proposals.
Wow. I think this tension is going to persist. It's deep and it needs to be resolved in some way we haven't quite figured out. I mean, healthcare is a classic example of that. I saw a poll today that 1 in 5 Americans believed that healthcare reform was repealed.
Right. That's how, that's
Stunning.
how close they're paying attention to some of this stuff. We're going to come back and we're going to try to find a little bit more information, this whole labor union movement and how it impacts the Indian community. Lots of tribal members have been there, no organized tribal government support to what's going down there. Long history of labor union in steelwork, manufacturing in Milwaukee, relocation members who went to Detroit, Dearborn, Flint,
Right.
Michigan, who supported unions. And so in our communities, we have labor union members who remember how the labor unions brought them up to a middle class level of income. So
Right.
we'll see where this goes, Mark. We got to go for today because we've got the rest
Okay.
of the program with some wonderful young people from Madison, Wisconsin that I ran into yesterday and interviewed. But let's keep an eye on next week. I want to come back and talk to it. We'll be right on the edge of the shutdown of government as we knew it, the way it sounds.
Sounds good.
And that is the latest roundup of news from Indian Country on this edition of the Native News Update. We want to thank you for joining with us. Come back again soon.